Chapter 12. Wilbur said, "It's time to give them their big present. You know what to do." "Understood, boss. They're going to pay for sure," Faye replied. Wilbur smiled. "Get some rest. Don't worry about me tomorrow. I'll go on my own." "All right, boss." Wilbur got up and returned to his room. Faye stared at his retreating figure and let out a small sigh. If she had been the one to be mistreated and humiliated like this, she would be sure to return it tenfold. Her boss was far too nice. However, she was not. She had never gone soft on her enemies before. The next day, Wilbur woke up at around 10 in the morning. He walked out of the house, then drove off to South Lake Resort Island. It was time for him to get some closure. At the same time, an SUV with a military badge on it stopped in front of house number 1. A tall and broad-shouldered middle-aged man stepped out of the car. He was dressed in regular clothes, but it was not hard to tell from his appearance that he was someone from the army. The man rang the doorbell. Susie opened the door and cheered. "Dad, you're finally home." "Yes." "Where's your grandpa?" the man asked. Susie frowned. "He's been locking himself in his room all day and acting all mysterious. That scammer's really gotten to him." "How's his health?" the man asked again. Susie said at once, "Grandpa took the medicine that the Seachertown medical team brought over, and he's doing much better now. He just had a couple of tests done on him, and all the results were positive." "That's great. Let me teach that liar a lesson. No one's taking advantage of the Grayson family name," the man mused coldly. Susie nodded at once. "Yes, you've got to teach him a lesson, or someone else might think they can get close to Grandpa in the future." Just then, the man turned and said to the driver, "Call up that scammer and tell him I'd like to meet with him." "All right." The driver made the call at once. A while later, he returned and said carefully, "He said that he's at a wedding over at South Lake Resort Island and that you should go look for him yourself if you want to see him." "That bastard's got some nerves." The man's expression hardened at once. "How dare he act all high and mighty to me, Gordon Grayson? We're going to South Lake Resort Island right now." Gordon got into the car, and the driver sped off at once. Susie let out a long breath. "You lying bastard. You're going to get it. Just you wait." After saying that, she went back inside and walked to her grandfather's room. She paused briefly before calling out, "Grandpa, it's time to go for your workout. You haven't come out of your room at all today." The room was completely silent, so Susie could only call out over and over again. Despite her grandfather's condition getting better, he would still need to work out. At last, Benjamin opened the door half an hour later and glared at Susie irritably. "Are you done? Don't I have even a bit of freedom?" "It's for your own good, Grandpa. Don't be so stubborn," Susie said. Benjamin sneered coldly. "I know what's going on with my body. You can cut the nagging. Are you doing all this to try to piss me off?" "How could you say that, Grandpa? If it hadn't been for the Seachertown medical team's care and ours, your condition wouldn't have gotten better," Susie said indignantly. Benjamin scoffed. "Do you really think that you did all the work?" Susie was angered as well. "Didn't we? You should know that your body's at its limit, and you're relying on the medicine to keep you alive. If it hadn't been for the medicine and me dropping out of med school to take care of you, would you still be around? Doesn't any of that matter to you?" Susie burst into tears as she said those words. She felt as if her grandfather was really losing his mind. He was not grateful for her care toward him all those years in the slightest. Yet that scammer had him dancing to the scammer's tune with just a few words, keeping him cooped up in his room all day doing some cultivation nonsense. Her sadness only grew as she thought more about it, sobbing harder by the second. Benjamin sighed at the sight of his granddaughter in the state. He went into his room, took out the medicine from his shoe cabinet, and showed it to her. Throwing the medicine in front of Susie, Benjamin said, "Take a look. This is what your medicine's done to me." Susie wiped her tears away in a daze, staring blankly at her grandfather. Benjamin did not say a word and stood right there. Susie picked up the box slowly and opened it. The vials of medicine were neatly lined up, completely untouched. "Grandpa, what's going on here?" Susie asked in disbelief. Benjamin sighed. "I've gotten sick of all that medicine. I've not touched any of these." Susie was in a state of shock. "But what about your health?" Benjamin looked at Susie and frowned. "Isn't it obvious? What did my report say? Susie stuttered. They said that your vital signs were all taking a turn for the better, and that even your fibrotic lungs were getting better too. Well, do you still think that it was the medicine that did all that? Benjamin asked. The medicine Susie was holding dropped to the ground with a thud. Susie's jaw was wide open in disbelief. Benjamin shook his head. You young people think you're so smart and know everything. Well, I'm going to tell you that miracles do exist. In fact, Dasha is full of prodigies like Wilbur Penn. When are you going to take a step back and stop seeing the world with such prejudice? Susie was taken aback. After some time, she finally spoke up. Grandpa, this can't be. The cultivation method that Guy taught you actually made your health better. What do you think? Benjamin replied. Susie was thoroughly speechless. She could not believe that it was real. Nevertheless, it was true that her grandfather had not taken any of the medicine but still got better miraculously. That was a fact, and there was no way for her to disprove it. At that moment, she faced the biggest dilemma in her life. A while later, she raised her head and said weakly, Grandpa, Dad came back. What's he doing here instead of watching over his post? Benjamin said, obviously displeased. Susie did not dare to speak, but she could not hide the truth either. She said meekly, he's gone to take care of Wilbur Penn. Benjamin immediately bellowed furiously. What? Who told you to do that? Susie fell into a panic right away. Grandpa, let me explain. I thought that Wilbur was a scammer who tried to use our family name for personal gain. That's why I told Dad to come back. Benjamin fumed. You idiots, get your dad back here. You two are going to apologize to Wilbur, and don't come back until he forgives you. The Grayson household has no place for people like you two. As he spoke, Benjamin was so aggravated that he launched into a fit of coughs. Susie was scared witless and rushed over to pat his back. I'll go right now, Grandpa. Please don't be angry. Just go already, Benjamin shouted. Susie did not dare to retaliate. She called out to the maids to watch over her grandfather before driving off to South Lake Resort Island herself. She started calling her father right away in the car, but none of her calls went through.